Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Now, I must admit, doing the voiceover for this video is always the hardest part of the pattern making process. So for today's video, I'm going to try to be more relaxed and just have a conversation instead of like trying to be really technical, because I try so hard to like rehearse everything I'm going to say, and then it just never goes to plan. So this is the dress we're going to be making. It's absolutely gorgeous. I love it. I love the fit. So to make the dress, you're obviously going to need your pattern pieces. You're going to have your skirt pieces, and you're going to have your top pieces, and you're also going to have some facing. You're going to need obviously a zipper. My zipper is about 9 inches long, some eyelets, an eyelet tool, boning of course, and your material. I will say get yourself some interfacing also. Yes, this is important. You're going to need some interfacing and also a lining fabric. So this is what I wanted to say. I would say get yourself 2 meters of fabric to be safe, and always do a mock up. Now, I wanted to show you guys a little trick for when you because my patterns do not come with a seam allowance, because I just don't want to interfere with how people want to do their seam allowances. Some people like a bigger seam allowance, a smaller seam allowance. So I'm going to show you this little trick that I've learned and have been using for a while on how you can, manipulate the situation to where you don't have to really draw a seam allowance. So you saw me measure that little cardboard piece, and yeah, I measured it to 0.5 inches, and I stick it onto my scissor, and then when I cut my pieces like that, it automatically gives me a 0.5 inch seam allowance. Now, to cut your pattern pieces, obviously you are going to need your top pieces need to be lined up along the selvage. Yes. I'm so sorry. I get so nervous when I do the voiceovers. I don't know why, but it's just like so nerve-wracking for me. I don't know why. So hence why, like today, I'm trying to be more relaxed and have a conversation, like I said, more than a tutorial. So anyway, I like to trace my pattern pieces and then move them. I'm not a huge fan of pinning paper onto the fabric, because I noticed that it kind of warps it, or sometimes the lines are not so straight because you had to pin the paper, and sometimes it bends or it folds the fabric. So that's why I like to just draw on my fabric, then cut. So you are going to need your pieces as follows. You're going to need to cut from your main fabric, you're going to need to cut from your interfacing, and you are going to need to cut from your lining fabric. So now this is my main fabric with my interfacing. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to iron my interfacing onto the main fabric. I'm using a lightweight interfacing. You're gonna have to decide what you want to use, depending on the fabric that you're using. But I'm using, for this pattern, I don't know what this fabric is called, because at my fabric store it literally doesn't have a name. It's just sitting there, and the texture of the fabric that I'm using as my main fabric, it feels a bit like a suede, but it's not really a suede. So anyway, what you want to do is you want to take your center front, and connect your side fronts to your center front, then connect your backs to your side fronts, just like that, like how we normally do when we are working with bustiers. It's just about sewing the side seams. And also I did serge the ends. Now to finish off my ends, what I like to do is, this new thing that I've learned to do, it is very tedious, but it's worth it. I like to just take the leftover chains and then just pull them into my seam, into the thread, into the chain. I just pull them between those threads so that everything is just sitting nice and neat. So this is something I've been practicing to have more patience. Usually what I would do is I would tie them and then cut the excess off, but I was like, you know what, let me try something new. Let me try and be extra fancy, and let me try this new method. If you do not have a serger, that's okay. What you can do is you can just use a zigzag stitch to finish off the ends. or if you know how to do a French seam, you can also do that. So I connected this side fronts to the center fronts and the backs to the side fronts on also my lining fabric, my main fabric, which was which I ironed the interfacing onto. So anyway, you want to clip it quickly. I'm so sorry. You want to clip your curves so that everything is just sitting smoothly. Now, one thing when you're working with the bustier, you need to make sure that you have cups, and your cups need to be protruding like that. Like, you know, you see how the cups are coming out? That's how you know you've drafted your bustier properly. So you don't have to worry about that because I did the drafting for us. Anyway, so what you want to do is you want to push your seam allowance towards one side, and then you're going to do a top stitch right close to that seam. Then you're going to do another stitch, which is going to be your channeling stitch, which is needs to be big enough to fit your boning. Make sure that you are catching the lining underneath. So I'm sure when you looked at the start of the video, you saw that all the seams had 2 stitches. So you want one top stitch and you want a channeling stitch. So the one stitch is going to be very, very close to your seam. The second stitch is going to be a bit further away so that your boning can fit. Then you want to take your 2 pieces, pin them at the top seam, and then stitch that top seam. Then take that top, turn it inside out. Then you just want to cut the corners of the bustier, those little sharp corners, cut them so that when you turn it inside out, it is nice and crisp. Now what I want to do is I'm going to clip my curves because I want everything to just sit nice and comfortably and smooth. If you don't clip your ends, you would notice that it's hard to get the piece sitting nicely. It's hard to get those beautiful curves and everything. So you just want to clip them a bit. Yeah, and then what you're going to do is you're going to turn it inside out and then push your seam allowance towards the back and then do a little quick top stitch. If you're not sure on how to do a top stitch, there are plenty of videos that will show you specifically how to do it. It's super easy, super simple. So now what you want to do when you're done with that top stitch is, with the top still inside out, you want to pin the side seams right over there. Just pin that, and then you are going to stitch on both sides. When you've done stitching on both sides, you want to turn your top right side out, right? And then you are going to press that seam right there with an iron. Make sure that it is nice and crisp. Everything is just perfect. And then what you're going to do is you are going to stitch 3. Oh my goodness, I don't know why I skipped it, but I'm going to tell you, you need to stitch from that back piece, right? You need to stitch 3 channels. 1 channel for the boning, another channel for your eyelets, and another channel for the boning. I'm so sorry, I don't know what happened to that footage, but from on your back piece, you need to stitch 3 channels. If you go back to the beginning of the video, you'll notice that the back had 3 channels. So yeah, stitch them like that, and then we are going to cut our boning. So for your boning, make sure that you are minusing your seam allowance, right? So my seam allowance is 0.5 inches. So you want to make sure that you make your boning 0.5 inches shorter, because obviously you're not going to stitch over the boning. I like to use plastic boning because for some odd reason, all the fabric stores around me do not have metal boning, and I see people use it all the time, and I'm like, oh, I'm so envious, guys, but I just cannot seem to get it. Like, I have been searching for months and I can't get it, so I always use the plastic boning. And what you want to do with your plastic boning is just take a nail file and just give it a quick little filing so that it's nice and curved and it doesn't tear through your fabric when you're putting it in. It should just slide easy. Now, here's another thing, right, I wanted to tell you about. So sometimes, sometimes I will make a mistake and make my boning channeling a bit too, narrow? A bit too narrow, and then my boning doesn't fit. So if you're ever into a situation like that, where the boning is a bit too narrow and it doesn't fit, what you want to do is you want to take like a scissor and just shave the sides of the boning. Shave the sides of the boning. Take your nail file and file it until it's thin enough to fit in your boning. That's a little trick or little solution for when you make your channeling way too narrow. Anyway, right over there, even though I didn't show you guys that you needed to make those casings, but you can see me going in and on that back piece I have 3 channelings over there, like I said, and those channeling, one is going to be for the boning, the middle one is going to be for my eyelets, the third one is going to be for my boning again. Okay, so while I'm still a bit busy with my boning, I wanted to share with you guys a really good book in case you want to get into making your own patterns and you want to get into it. So when I was drafting this pattern, I love to read books. I'm always reading books, even though some of the things I just know at the top of my head. I'm always like, you know what, let's go back to the book, see what it says. So when I was drafting this pattern, I used, the name of the book is Draping the Complete Course by Carol Kissel. Page 072, sorry, page 072 talks about basically draping a princess line bustier. So if you're interested and you want to make your own patterns and you want to get into it, I will say that I recommend this book. You can buy the ebook and you can start learning how to drape your own patterns. When I'm draping my patterns, I use calico. I use calico. You can use muslin, whatever. What I love about this book is it actually shows you how to, it gives you like little projects that you can do on your own, and it also gives you measurements of the pieces that you need to drape your whatever you're working on. And also what I love is it also gives you some tips on how to prepare your dress form for draping. And one thing I've noticed is that one thing I learned from this book, which changed how I make my bustiers, is when you're working with the dress form, you know how like sometimes the dress form doesn't have enough bust, like the bust on the dress form is quite small. So in the book, it actually gives you a tip that you should add some padding to the bust. So what I do is I take 2 round cups and I put them on the dress form, and then I drape with those 2 like padded round cups. And by doing that, I have my cups, like you can see in this project, in this dress, the cups are so, they protrude a lot, they super formed. And yeah, if you're somebody that's been making bustiers and you notice that my bustiers don't have enough cuppage, you should do that. You should add some foam cups to the breast of your dress form and drape with that. So basically what I want to do is, after I fit all my boning into the channels, I did close each channel, right? You guys might have seen that I closed each channel, and then now I'm going to find, I'm gonna give it the final close. I'm so sorry guys. I'm gonna pin the lining with the front facing fabric, and then I'm gonna stitch it one more time to really close it. So what you want to do basically is you want to put your boning in and then close the boning in, like close the channel, and then later on, right now in the video, you're going to put the lining and the front, line them up together, and then you're going to stitch that bottom seam closed one more time, making sure that everything is lining up perfectly. Yes, okay, I'm gonna give you guys another book that I love when I'm draping, not when I'm draping, when I am working, is this book is a mandatory must-have. Helen Joseph, pattern making for fashion design. That's a really good book. So now what you want to do is you want to take your facing and you want to stick your interfacing to it, right? You want to iron your interfacing to it. So you have your facing pieces and then you have your interfacing, then stick everything. Then you're going to serge all the side seams of your facing. Then you are going to stitch everything together like that. Open those seams and then you are going to serge that bottom line all together. So that one is pretty simple. Then we're going to move on to our skirt. And for our skirt, what you should start with is you should start by serging all the side seams of the skirt except the zip seams. Do not serge the zip seams yet. Just start with serging the side seams. I forgot to serge them, but then when I was done stitching them, I did go to my serger and serge them. But you will start with serging them. If you don't have a serger, that's okay. You can use the zigzag stitch or French seam. You can use a French seam. Anyway, as I was saying, so to make the skirts, I used a lot of the knowledge that is in Helen Joseph's dress making for fashion design, how to make a flared skirt. I think that's in, I don't know what the page number is, but it is a really, really good book again. So what you want to do is you want to take your top piece, right, and you want to mark the center of the top piece. And after you've marked the center, you are going to also mark the center of your facing and also mark the center of the skirt. I think this pattern, it's really not that hard to make. It's very technical. One thing I've realized, because I think I worked a lot with, okay, so let's go back to the tutorial quickly. What you want to do is you want to add some interfacing to where you'll be adding your zipper. So you want to cut your interfacing just a little bit longer than your zipper, and then you are going to iron your interfacing onto the wrong side of the fabric. You're going to do that to both sides. Remember, my zip is about 9 inches long. I'm not doing an invisible zipper. Maybe we should, yeah, I should make a pattern with an invisible zipper. I don't know. I'm not somebody who gets caught up in how zippers look. I know some people hate the regular zippers. I don't mind my zipper showing, basically. So, and then after you put your interfacing, you want to go and serge that seam, right? So I've serged the seam. Now what I'm going to do is, I'm happy with the seam serge. I used a 3 thread overlock serge, 3 thread, 4 thread, whatever floats your boat. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take my skirt piece, and then I am essentially going to sandwich my top between the skirt and the facing, right? So make sure that you are putting your skirt right side up, then you're putting your top right side down, then you are putting your facing right side down. Basically, just pin everything and then look at it, look at it to make sure that everything is facing the right direction. So I was saying, okay, then you're going to obviously stitch that whole entire seam. When you're done stitching that seam, you can also serge it. Now this is what everything will look like. I did serge it because I wanted to have that very, very neat look, but you don't have to worry about that. The reason why I added facing to it is because I wanted to hide that seam. So even if you don't have a serger, that facing is going to hide, you know, the seam. Now you want to like work on your zipper. So basically I'm pinning my zipper on the right side of my fabric like so. It's very hard to explain how to stitch a zipper, so just look how I'm doing it. It's actually quite simple. I'm one of those people that used to hate working with zippers because I was like, it's so complicated, but it's not complicated at all. It's just a matter of playing around with it. So basically, yeah, so I'm going to stitch my zipper, making sure that you see that little silver thing at the top of my zipper that marks the end of my zipper. I want that to line up with that top seam, and then when I'm done, I am going to stitch the lining onto the facing onto the zipper, but not yet. So there we go, my zipper is stitched on. One side of my zipper is stitched on, so that is what it looks like. So now I have that lift over. So now, ta-da, it looks really neat. Always stitch as close as you can to the zipper teeth. Now I'm going to go back and I'm going to do the same thing for the other side. Going back to what I was originally saying, because we had to focus on the tutorial. So basically, I think I've worked a lot with stretch fabrics, and stretch fabrics are very hard to sew, but making patterns with stretch fabrics is super easy. And if you want to get into making patterns, I would say try and play around with some stretch fabric, because you can always fix fit issues with stretch fabric by simply okay, so what you want to do now is you're going to push that seam allowance towards the interfacing, and you are going to quickly do a top stitch. Back to stretch fabrics. Usually with stretch fabrics, sorry again, now you want to fold over your facing and stitch it again. So fold over your facing like that, and then you are just going to stitch it down, and that is it, you're done. And also at the zipper seam, you want to just put those seams together and stitch all the way down. Then we are going to move on to inserting our eyelets, which is super easy. Mark where you want to position your eyelets, mark how many eyelets you want to put. You can put a lot of eyelets, you can put a few eyelets. It's all up to you basically. Now we're just freestyling. It's all up to you and what you want to do. So I'm putting in my eyelets. Back to our conversation about stretch fabrics. Stretch fabrics are very easy. When you have a fit issue with a stretch fabric, it's a matter of just, you know, making something a little bit bigger or making something a little bit tighter. Woven fabrics are very complicated because, you know, everything is super technical, but stitching woven fabrics is way easier than stitching stretch fabrics. So there you go, I have my eyelets in. Now let's finish the hem. Finishing the hem is all going to be up to you, but what I like to do, because it's a rounded skirt, I like to do a rolled hem, and I'm going to stitch it down. I lost the footage of me stitching it down, I'm so sorry, but it's pretty like rolling it twice and stitching it down. And this is what the dress looks like. One thing I would have changed is please use a thicker fabric that is going to hide that interfacing, the facing. My fabric, I didn't realize how light and how see-through my fabric was. Otherwise, that is the only thing that ruined the dress. If it wasn't for that, everything would have been fine. And also another thing I want to talk about is in the pattern that you're gonna get, or the pattern that you have purchased, the side seam of your skirt is going to line up with the side seam of the top. So be on the, you know, obviously on mine, when I was done with the pattern, I was like, what could make this pattern even nicer? And I realized that, you know what, if I just lined up those side seams, it will be perfect. So I did edit the pattern, and I did make sure that yours, the one that you have, is going to line up perfectly. So make sure that the side seam of your skirt is lining up with the side seam of the top. Otherwise, that's it from me. I hope you enjoyed this video and the little conversation we had.
Hello, stranger. It's been a minute since we last kicked it. And by the way, just got in time.